good morning, good afternoon, or good evening, wherever you're joining us from. Welcome to Web3 Warriors, episode 13, featuring Manlo / InfoRemix, an artist with his collection Art of Sound Money NFT project. And inspired by his collection, today we're going to be talking about kind of the fundamentals of blockchain and really what makes this technology so revolutionary and so impactful as we enter this Web3 space. And, here at Web3 Warriors, we're really focused on the impacts for the creators, and the way that blockchain is really empowering creators to be able to sell their music, art, even services really on the blockchain through direct peer-to-peer transactions that basically cut out middle people and make sure that you're getting the lion's share of the compensation for your work. So I want to welcome you to Web3 Warriors podcast. I'm David Krome. I go by Krome in the metaverse. This is episode 13, and we're really happy to have Manlo here with us to talk blockchain fundamentals. So the way we're going to go through it today, I'm planning to share my thoughts on really what I see as kind of the revolutionary properties of blockchain and why Web3 is so amazing, and especially for creators, but really for any business people or anyone really trying to find this new layer of financial independence and sovereignty. So when I look at it, I look at kind of three key areas that really change the game. And those are immutability, transparency, and accountability. So when I look at, what's happening in the NFT space, for example, right, there's a lot of talk around provenance and the idea that, everything, anything that's of significance can be kind of captured in a time capsule and minted onto the blockchain, and now it's got the provenance of having been minted at this specific time, when this happened. For example, we just had the Bitcoin conference in Miami, right? And I'm sure there's a lot of NFTs that sprung out of that conference saying, this was the Bitcoin 2022 conference. Maybe it's artwork that was on display there or sold there. And now it'll have that attachment on the blockchain forever. So, that's provenance. You can look back and you'll always be able to see that. And your node or your token on the blockchain is also immutable, which means that it's never going to go away. Now, this relies on the blockchain, of course, staying, secure and functionable for the foreseeable future, which is why a lot of people look at Bitcoin and they look at Ethereum because of how decentralized it is and how much it has, there's so many nodes all over the world that there's pretty much no chance that it's ever going to get shut down unless the internet completely has a catastrophic failure. So with that point, on that first point, immutability is very key to Web3 and to what, the pitch is with Web3, which is that once you own, whether it's a piece of art, whether it's digital land in the metaverse, or anything, any digital asset really on the blockchain, it is immutable, which means you can never lose it as long as you don't lose your seed phrase to your wallet, to your crypto Web3 wallet, right? So that's the first one, immutability, not having to lose it and having it forever. And the transparency as well, right? So when it's on the blockchain, specifically with Ethereum or Bitcoin or Solana or Tezos, all these major kind of blockchains, they are very transparent. So you can look at the actual transaction on the blockchain. Everyone can follow it. And with that, you also get the next word that I'm very keen on is accountability, right? So they kind of work hand in hand. So the fact that it's transparent, nobody can lie about owning something, right? So that goes back to the provenance as well, right? The fact that it's transparent shows that if I purchased, something directly from Snoop Dogg, for example, who is having a lot of fun with NFTs these days, and I can go back and, forevermore, you'll be able to go back and verify that, Chrome's wallet purchased, X, Y, and Z track from Snoop Dogg's wallet, So it's just a really key aspect of the blockchain and the Web3. What's being presented here is this new transparency. In the old world, in the traditional world, if you were a photographer and a symposium said, I really like your photograph, can we feature it? And, if we sell it, we'll give you 50% of the proceeds and we'll take, 40% and the symposium will take 10% or something. But you often didn't even know who purchased that photograph from you, right? In some cases, the symposium actually said you're not allowed to know who purchased it because we don't want you to go off and make future sales to this person without including us, right? So that's kind of like the old world, legacy world that we're trying to get away from here in Web3. So you always have that transparency. You always know who's actually purchasing your art and your creativity from you. So that's another key aspect of Web3 and really what makes the blockchain so revolutionary. And with that comes accountability. So if you are trying to, sell something that is of questionable integrity, or you're lying about what it is you're selling, that can come back to haunt you fairly easily because everything is transparent on the blockchain, which is why you'll find in some projects, NFT projects, this is why we always say, do your own research. But in some NFT projects, people want to stay anonymous and people aren't telling you exactly who they are and what their background is. And that's a big red flag. It should be a big red flag for a lot of people. But with that being said, I think the Bored Ape Yacht Club, for example, was able to have a very successful launch and project by remaining anonymous, at least for the first little bit, their team. So there are, something you have to balance out, but I definitely recommend doing your own research. And I personally am not interested in NFT projects where people are remaining anonymous or not being, what we call doxed in the space, which is showing their full self. So accountability is another really key kind of foundational arm that I see in Web3. Now, with that being said, we have Manlo here with us, who has really taken a much deeper dive into the blockchain space. I have both his OpenSea here with some really cool artwork, all inspired by different concepts of what in blockchain is called sound money. So some of these concepts include portability, integrity, inclusivity, fungibility, energy, divisibility. So we're going to get into a lot of these kind of concepts and why they are important to blockchain, and kind of the artwork that Manlo has created, kind of inspired by those concepts. So I'm really looking forward to that. I think we're going to be able to learn a lot about kind of that foundational value of blockchain and what it's really presenting to the world, and why it is different from your typical Web 2 or legacy economic structures. So it's really important to know, and I have a lot to learn myself. As I've just stated, those three areas, immutability, transparency, and accountability, are kind of the main things that have pulled me in, but it gets much more granular than that. So before we really dive into it too deep, I do want to welcome Manlo to the Web3 Warriors and give him an opportunity to kind of share a little bit more about his background and where he's coming to Web3 from, and maybe just how you landed in Web3, Manlo. So thank you, Manlo, for joining. Please do share a little bit of your background and how you got to Web3 here. How are you doing?
I'm doing great. Thanks for inviting me for a calm Saturday morning in Southern California. I go by InfoRemix. Everything is just a remix, and it depends how you interpret it and make it surprising and original. Anyhow, my journey in Web3 is around 2013. I learned about this technology online somewhere, and just fascinating by the structure of it. And of course, some of the pricing was interesting too at that time. You heard from going from 1 cent to $100 at that time. Like, that's quite explosive increase. And just digging to understand what's behind the technology fairly early.
You said 2015, sorry?
13.
13, wow.
When it's $100.
Yeah, you're a real OG.
Yeah, and you couldn't get it from an exchange that easy. That used a place called Mangox back in the days, and someone that invented that company in Japan. And but I got that Bitcoin from my friend.
Wait, you got really a full hard. Bitcoin?
Yes, I paid him $100 cash and get that. And long story short, didn't pay much attention, and that's why you got the loss. I lost that $100, the whole Bitcoin.
You didn't just hodl it. You didn't hold on for dear life, Manlo.
I did, but I wasn't educated enough to learn all those things we should learn. Imagine it's not $100, 100,000, a million, and more. So I guess I'm the practitioner that you pay the price to learn, and after that, just stay on course. I did take one of the class from Palm, one of the pretty well spoken crypto.
Pong, the NFT artist?
Palm Pompiano. So I took his class to learn more about NFT or Bitcoin in general in 2017.
Oh, wow.
And then I think I took it as 2020. So stay on course till this year. But I don't think there's NFT back then. So I'm just like a bit too far OG. So I'm just gonna shorten the time frame to recent journey. And yeah, I think just right before the Bored Apes and stuff. And it's because I went through the 2017 crazy drop. I was also got burned by some of the ICO stuff, so I was a bit reluctant on some of the NFT project early on.
Yeah, those ICOs can be pretty risky, eh? So that's the coin offering, right? Independent coin or initial coin offering. So for people who are not familiar, the initial coin offering is kind of similar to initial stock offerings, right? Where a certain kind of elite group, or maybe not elite, but people who were just the first in the door, get special access to the stock. It's kind of similar with up and coming cryptocurrencies. And you'll hear a lot of interesting pitches about certain ICO potential and investing early and guaranteeing 10x, 20x. It's very, very
just
risky.
like some of the NFT projects right now, but they have JPEG.
right. Not dissimilar from some of the NFT projects for sure. So looking at your artistic background, Manlo, how did crypto, maybe even before NFTs, inspire? Had you taken this kind of connection between art and crypto before? Had you thought of it before NFTs, or was it something that kind of came to you after you discovered NFTs?
So besides the discovery route, my day job is to create design work. So I'm a designer, and to cross over to the NFT was just a testament for me to continue to express, because there is a censorship resistant layer on these protocols. And what attracts me is you allow all kinds of freedom expression around the world, and you can see all these great things happen to artists around the world, and they pick up that skills. And
inspiring, right?
Inspiring,
most definitely.
Actually, from 13-year-old to 93 years old, you hear like all kinds of artists are rising up and just able to pick up this tool to make a living. I've
even seen some 11-year-old artists making crazy sales with the help of their parents. It's pretty impressive. And some photographies that are in their early teens as well. And it's really interesting. So you said you're a product designer essentially by trade. And has that been your background like since you learned about crypto?
Can you repeat that? That's
just as far as like your background at the time when you learned about crypto, you were still working in product design, and then it seems like you've taken your time to kind of jump in with both feet. Like you heard about it and you were learning about it, but you weren't necessarily like a heavy investor. Would you consider yourself an investor today in cryptocurrency?
I definitely allocate a lot more than the 2013 round. I think it's also the conviction, right? When the investment is, the duration of the investment plus the allocation. So, that linked to how much you believe in that, you put money where the mouth is. But I think we're going a little too far, but to derail what the Sound Money
it. I like to get a bit of a background of where you're coming from,
Oh, sure.
So, with that in mind, I mean, it seems like you took a little bit more care in understanding the fundamentals of blockchain, right? And clearly you were inspired or see the value in it more so than I think a lot of people in the space probably don't understand a lot of these concepts that you've not only understood, but have broken down into very relevant, really cool symmetrical art that kind of basically says, you know, the concept without saying it, right? So here we're looking at the wall. You've got medium of exchange, you got store of value, and you've got unit of account. So just looking at these three concepts and the way you've kind of designed them as almost abstract symmetrical art, can you just give us a little bit maybe of a breakdown? Let's start with medium of exchange, looking at it as a kind of concept of sound money, and you know, how does cryptocurrency kind of foot that bill and fill that requirement as a medium of exchange that is more reliable and more maybe equitable than your average fiat currency?
Yeah, is one of the principle about money is how you exchange good and service. And you know, imagine now you have to do a trade from, you know, Taiwan to Brazil, and you have to go through all this exchange to do that transaction. Now, you know, Web3 shortened that, just a great technical invention. And yeah.
Yeah, and I think that goes back to this portability here as well, right? Which when I think about, you know, the potential of Web3 specifically, but even really Bitcoin before there was Ethereum, before there was this whole new layer of Web3, which is, you know, tokenized assets essentially, there was just Bitcoin, and even just Bitcoin on its own allowed, one of the biggest things it was trying to do was kind of break down barriers, right? Financial barriers, and allow international exchange of currency, exchange of value, and the portability. So, you know, I'm looking at this graphic that you created. It's the animated graphic for portability, and it's really beautiful. And it kind of, I can see what you're saying. So, you know, you're starting at one node, going to another node, and kind of going through these circles that might symbolize all kinds of you know, transactions or little, you know, spaces you got to run through in the digital world. So when you're looking at portability and you look at the international impacts, like, what do you think is going to be the result of that long term? Like, how do you see this evolving?
Again, the middleman is going to run out of business. The remitting industry is 540 billion, right? And then you can return that back to the user instead of, you know, sending money back home. You're being charged high fees. Now there's such a technology allow people to do that. By all means, you know, how do you carry 1 ton of gold value to transfer another country versus you just put in your, you know, little hard drive?
Yeah, and it makes you wonder, like, how does Western Union even compete, you know? And like, why hasn't it just been fully embraced already, right? Like, you would think if governments have, you know, people actually, you know, doing the necessary research and realizing how their economy is stifled by, you know, these international bodies that, you know, charge people exorbitant fees to transfer money from out of state. You know, what do you think is preventing some of these developing countries? I mean, we saw Ecuador do it, to their credit. But what do you think is preventing some of these, especially when you look at like Africa, you know, some of these countries from just embracing blockchain as the solution to international commerce, really?
I don't know, any oligarchy and old technology, they're going to block the way for new invention. They're going to slow it down, just like, you know, how we transit from oil to green technology. They just have to delay the development, right?
Right.
But sorry to go back a little story. You may notice that I might jump around.
No, that's good.
So I was taking a break from about this creation. I was working on waiting for the new PC setup. So and then from day to day, I use Figma a lot, this software. So the whole idea of this collection is, you know, using a low cost free software to create artwork, to inspire, you know, young artists to do such things, to make a living or, you know, pocket money.
So you said these are made in Sigma, these art pieces?
Figma is another software that for prototyping in the product design, the digital product design industry.
That's really cool.
I was waiting for, you know, when you do like Photoshop work, you need, you know, hardware, you know, Unreal Engine. Mm-hmm. And it's such a pain,
It's a
as the
big
mining to
learning
compete
curve,
with
right?
Dreamer, right? And so I was thinking, like, how do we use the simplistic, minimalistic style and design a complex idea? So I took a little month off, just thinking around while I was waiting for the desktop. So that was part of the story about the whole kind of Sign Money poster derail from
Yeah.
my NFT journey.
Yeah, no, it's interesting, Manlo, because we frequent a lot of the same clubhouse spaces and some of these different NFT corners, excuse me. And I haven't heard too much of you, promoting the Sound of Art or the Art of Sound Money project, and I find it so fascinating.
Yeah,
You
and then
should promote it more, is what I'm trying to say. Because
yeah,
I
thank you
really
very
think
much.
you're gonna find a lot of people who are really interested in what you've done here. I mean, I've never seen blockchain concepts kind of broken down in such a clear and kind of beautiful, symmetrical way.
Yeah, there's a lot more to come. Like imagine, making this in 3D. That's why my aspirational goal that to
Wow.
kind of
Yeah,
take
that would
this,
be really cool.
and as well as translate, the title of it in different languages. So that would be really interesting to kind of using other languages to morph this collection. But the whole idea is just using minimalistic style to break it
Yeah.
down.
And I want to
And then you
touch
can
on
play with
something.
colors, and it's so much fun. So
Oh, the colors are beautiful, and the way that you kind of go from monochrome to color, and the way it kind of like the animated ones especially are really neat, because it's almost like part of it's almost in black and white or very minimal color, and then it just kind of pops. Yeah, it's really
yeah,
cool.
it show a Blender is free too. So
Right.
any artist around the world, you have the will, you want to learn, you can create like all kinds of cool stuff. So
Most
uh,
definitely. I
but
want to.
that's what I see the hardware in the blockchain side. Later on, Ethereum is a supercomputer on blockchain. If there is a cloud technology in the future where I think Nvidia is doing it, the Omniverse, you can
Right, the
cloud compute
omniverse. Yeah.
a 3D software. So you're just controlling a supercomputer on the cloud, right?
Right. So what you're describing
And
there, just for any listeners or viewers not familiar, NVIDIA is creating essentially a metaverse where they develop 3D, like basically a 3D production house in the metaverse, essentially. So anyone who has their different kind of roles in the development of the 3D, build, whatever the project is that they're working on, will be able to jump into the Omniverse, and you'll have the designer, you'll have the writer, you'll have all the different key kind of players joined up in the digital space from their home. So yeah, that's called the Omniverse, and that's NVIDIA's latest really interesting pet project, their own kind of metaverse play, which is not your typical metaverse of the way many people understand it, or kind of what Facebook is trying to go for, or what exists right now in Decentraland or crypto voxels. This one is much more production centered, right, and focused on building and co-creating. So it's looking pretty interesting. So that's Omniverse. I want to touch on something else you said, Manlo, about the fact that you used a software that you had already been familiar with from your product design career, right? And I remember when we had Kofi on the show, and he was talking about the software he used to build his masks, his amazing 3D African masks that he builds. It was the same scenario, right? Because I think he was from Architect, or he had done like AutoCAD kind of programs. So it was a program that he just kind of had on his computer, and it turns out that it builds 3D assets in a really cool kind of shiny way that looks super realistic, that worked out so perfectly for his masks. And it's interesting because he doesn't even know Blender yet, or he doesn't fully know it. So it's just another perfect example, like you were saying, kind of use the assets, use the tools that you have at your disposal, and you might be able to create some surprising things that you didn't realize,
yeah, and then knowing the constraint. Based on this software, you can only do simple animation, and I'm just using what is given you and create the best outcome. I think that's what I learned from the designing.
Yeah.
There's no
Super cool.
perfect solution, and you're just trying to understand. But this one is kind of a little self-expression as well. For me, minimalism is a way to kind of filter down, settle down. I have a busy mind, and while doing this simplistic geometric shape, I felt a piece.
Nice.
And if I can create and translate, hopefully communicate in different language, hopefully I can design something simple enough that a kid can understand. I think that's my goal. All these concepts I want to explain to her.
I love it. So I think you've done a really great job, and the minimalism comes through, but also the symmetry, and also like the core kind of message, whether it's the scarcity one, the portability, verifiability. So maybe before we get into a little bit more of these concepts, could you just give a quick kind of umbrella of what you view as, the sound money principles that define blockchain? What are your thoughts on that?
Sound money is more like a marketing, because there are some quality of money kind of mixed into this collection, but sound money really is, you have your scarcity, the quantity of what it defined it is not changeable, as well as it's limited. That's what it makes the value increase. And to champion what you had said earlier is the transparency, the amount of what it defined is by the code that we all agree upon, and there's a open ledger that allow anyone can check in. So that's the beauty of it.
International open ledger that is fully, like you say, transparent, accountable. Looking at the scarcity angle, right? How do you create artificial scarcity on the blockchain? And this is something that I've been a little confused by, because I believe Ethereum technically hasn't taken that route, right? Like, has Ethereum made a way to essentially add more Ethereum to the network always, whereas Bitcoin, it's like a hard cap, right, on the amount of Bitcoin? Or am I reading that wrong? I'm not sure. That's how I've understood it.
From my understanding is the BTC has that hard code 21 million that you cannot modify. But someone may going to challenge me. It'd be nice to see what audience knows too. In Ethereum, there was a hack for 16, 17 for the Ethereum Classic.
Mm-hmm.
So at the end of the day, there's a core team can still change the code by whatever the council and voting, right?
Right.
So there's it's not fully. There's still a way to modify it.
So the scarcity isn't guaranteed. It's not a hard cap.
At the end of the day, someone may vote, let's increase the supply due to XYZ,
mm-hmm.
right? And that is the, human nature, we change based on circumstance to react.
Right. And it's that adaptability that Ethereum is kind of proud of on one hand, but on the other hand, it's kind of an always work in progress, right? Like, it's been how many years now we've heard about Ethereum 2.0, at least over a year. And it'll be coming out, they're trying to switch from proof of work to proof of stake mining is, right? So
and then that's why the value increase if they say promise that what they're gonna set, and by burning the existing supply, then it's just relative, right? You have less and price increase. So
right.
But I still think it's better than fiat.
Yeah, no doubt. Well,
because that is not
goes back to that transparency point, right?
As you want, right? So you can inflate, how we experience right now.
Yeah, that's true. And exactly, you get inflation, you get uncontrolled, unchecked spending. At least if you are agreeing as a board or as a whole blockchain, essentially, to what the new layers are going to be, what the new layout or what the new amount of coins is going to be. It's all transparent. It's not unaccounted for. It's all fully accounted for and shows on the blockchain. So that's the difference. Whereas when you're printing fiat money forever and trillions and there's no accountability for it. But I think that's the criticism too. Some people see a future where that's why they're trying to get into these digital currencies, right? which is not the same as cryptocurrency. A very important distinction, right? The central bank digital currency is very much still a fiat, government-based currency that would just happen to live on a digital blockchain, but is not going to have the same levels of scarcity and accountability and transparency, frankly, that you get with the true cryptocurrencies, with blockchain and Ethereum specifically. So what are your thoughts on that, Manlo, as far as central bank digital currencies and maybe the future of money? And do you think that governments are actually going to embrace any of these principles of sound money that you've highlighted so well here?
I think they should embrace just for their own citizens' well-being, not eroded by reckless printing behavior. But I think everyone has to adopt digital. It's just more efficient, and by efficiency, you can save costs. And they have to, everyone is working on the background to find ways to make a better product, right? But so far, BTCs and a few top blockchains are superior, and they're trying to catch up.
Yeah. Well, and I mean, and to that point about the lucrative opportunities, right? And the fact that, you're really skimming out a lot of fat if you embrace blockchain, and you're creating a lot more accountability within your system. I mean, there's a whole other conversation around blockchain voting as well, because the system is so transparent and accountable. 1-to-1, each individual vote will be very clear, and you can make it so that the vote is still private, even though you know that you voted, but you don't know who you voted for, essentially. Do we know of any governments fully embraced this yet? I feel like I heard Ukraine thought about it, but I don't think they did use it in their last election. But are there any countries that are actually embraced blockchain voting yet?
Not that I know of. Maybe,
but it does seem like a solution to fascism, right?
At the end of the day, is the how the KYC, as long as they can verify it's you, right?
Right. Well, that's just
but
it.
I can see that these technologies will help a lot for voting, to just pump up the percentage of voter. In a way, you don't have to take off certain day to wait in the long rain to cast that vote, to vote your voice. You can use technology to do that, and to expand beyond country. Every human being should have a right of voting for our planet.
There you go.
And that vote should be heard, voiced, and utilized as a power to change. And I'm waiting for that.
Yeah, I agree. I'm fully with you. And what's to stop? We already have our SIN number, right? So literally all you have to do is attach your individual SIN number to a specific voting wallet address, you could say, for lack of a better term. But essentially, if each individual SIN has their attached voting wallet, if you want to look at it that way, then who voted, and you only get to vote once. And it's so easy to track. It would just completely cut out, you can't make accusations of dead people voting. You can't make accusations of any, it'd basically just be all fully transparent and accountable, for better or worse, wherever that leads us. But at least it would be.
Remember to keep your seed phrase safely somewhere.
Yeah, well, yeah, I mean, that's the thing, right? Does the government have the seed phrase then? I don't know. But that'd have to be ironed out for sure. But the potential is there. And to that point, I don't want to be seen as somebody spreading FUD about democracy. I think especially in Canada and America, our systems do work very well, and our democracy voting has been accounted for and counted very well. But that's just to say that technology can kind of highlight some of these issues that we've seen, where people don't like the results of an election and they want to start claiming it's all fake and making up excuses as to why they lost, basically. So the blockchain technology
became to corrupt the fact, like you mentioned earlier.
Exactly.
It returned back to doing more for other people, right?
Yeah. No, I love it. And I mean, we're talking currency and finance, but definitely on the social domestic front, on the democratic front, I should say, I do see huge opportunities. I've also received some interesting input from people who see the potential in the education space as well for blockchain to kind of level the playing fields in that sense and allow a little bit more equitable education, because you're seeing certain public schools in certain communities just basically get crap quality of education, whereas other areas, get better quality. But if you, kind of streamline that process and have it all equitable over the blockchain, there's a huge opportunity there to really create some important changes and improve the level and quality of education, especially in America, where I think their public schools vary greatly based on the communities that you're in, right? So just another thing to think about. But back to the concept of finance and this international monetary system that, these sound money principles are speaking to. On the issue of sustainability and energy, looking at these two awesome graphics that you've created here, how do you feel about the criticisms of blockchain on the energy front, first of all? And do you see kind of changes in a good way happening, or do you think that the criticisms of energy consumption for blockchain were ever valid to begin with? And how do you view that conversation?
I think if you can measure what you consume, and if you have data to back up what your claim is, and I think in general there are more and more data show green energy is producing more and more mining activities. So, and then and that's good. You can see what is being measured versus I don't know. There's so many waste that's not even seen. We can post some articles that to let people know what was being used. I think blockchain's most efficient way. It's just like the like Michael Saylor said, it's like energy. You store space and time. It's like a digital property. So he's one of the best dude that I learned from. And as you can see, how Tesla is transferring the whole segment towards that. It's computation power, store of energy, and you connect those together. It's like a win-win.
And when you look at them, I've heard the argument that basically all money is a transfer of energy, right? And that when you're paying somebody, you're basically transferring your energy to them and agreeing to a specific amount, right? But in the sense of, the energy consumption on the blockchain and how, alternative energies are, I agree, kind of actually being pushed forward by blockchain and by especially Bitcoin miners. But when looking at the energy consumption overall, sorry, who were you quoting just there? Or citing?
Saylor. He Michael Saylor.
Michael Saylor
has interpretation on how his interpretation on the blockchain, especially Bitcoin.
Yeah, he's definitely a Bitcoin maxi, but for good reason. I listened to his conversation with Kathleen Wood. And I think they just differ on, whether or not it should be just Bitcoin. Or I think Kathleen's a little more open to Ethereum than he is. But yeah, as far as the basics of sound money and the basics of the integrity of Bitcoin, he likes to use that word integrity a lot, I think. And I think that's key, because no one person, no government, no big group of people. They can drive down the cost of Bitcoin by selling off huge amounts of it, but that's basically all they can do, right? Like, no one's going to force there to be more Bitcoin in the system. No one can, say only this group or this demographic or this geography or this geographic location has access to Bitcoin. We've seen attempts at that. You look at China and even Russia and some other, Nigeria, to a lesser extent, have tried to make it so that their citizens do not have access to Bitcoin, and we've seen that almost always backfire, really. And in the context of China, I think they even shot themselves in the foot on the economic front, because they had so many miners and they had so many innovative developers really building out the Bitcoin economy and helping to kind of decentralize that network. And then they went really hard against them and basically kicked them all out, and lost their own hash power by a significant amount. And when you look at hash power on the blockchain network, it's basically just saying, you know, like, where is most of the mining happening? And at one point, I believe it was like 50% or even more of hash power was going through China. And now I believe that's changed to something like 50% going through the States, and Canada's received a lot of that as well. So what are your thoughts on that, and the idea of, you know, basically maybe the new economic power is the hash power? You know, like, how do you view the future growth of, let's just stick with Bitcoin for now, maybe, and that kind of going back to Michael Saylor and his points on integrity. You know, how do you view the evolution of that, and do you think that governments should just be getting out of the way, or do you think it's just going to be more of the kind of conflict like we saw in China?
I think Satoshi, you know, him or the group invented after the '08 collapse, and you know, right now we have an alternative technology to counter off what the establishment want us to use. And oh, sorry, I lost the train of thought on what was the question about.
Yeah, as far as like other governments that, you know, well, we've seen what China's tried to do, right? And I was making the case that every time you try to kind of criminalize it and basically try to act like Bitcoin is just for criminals and, you know, shady transactions, it tends to backfire. But in China's case, you know, they've definitely done an effective job of kicking out most of their miners. So I was just curious how you see that unfolding. You know, do you see maybe North America, you know, embracing the hash power and wanting to do more mining and kind of embracing their role maybe as a future leader in this space, or how do you think it's going to evolve?
I'd love to have more country involved. I think, you know, the world needs a world reserve currency, not based on any subjective small group of people. It's from the ground up. And that, you know, this 13-year experiment has been laying the foundation of moving that step forward. You're scaring
some powerful people with that, Manlo.
It's just clicks, right?
Yeah, don't shoot the messenger. No, I feel you though. About? Yeah, no, it's the reserve currency, and that's what Michael Saylor, again, going back to him, he does mention that a lot, right? That this has basically been an ongoing project to create an actual reliable international monetary system that is not governed by any one government or any one man, right?
I don't know. I think it's a good thing where you ship off any kind of dictatorship country where and ship that power away, and that's my view.
Yeah. So I mean, so what do you think about this argument where Bitcoin went from kind of trying to be, like you say, the world reserve currency, or maybe even the world currency, to being more of a store of value, which I've seen even Michael Saylor kind of shift his rhetoric around that, where he's kind of okay with the idea that it is a digital store of value as opposed to maybe being a digital currency that replaces fiat currencies. Instead, it kind of almost forms the foundation of basically Web3, you could say, or the metaverse, or this digital space. And by holding so much value as a digital asset on the blockchain, it then, you know, allows the rest of the digital economy to kind of flourish. How do you view that? And I don't know if I'm even understanding that properly. As an international store of value, like, what is the true value in that? Yeah,
I think if you know any store of value is I don't know, all of us have a little like kind of financial literacy on, you know, what assets, you know, and if you just store whatever fiat currency in your own country, and unless your government is not printing, it's kind of still diluting, right? And the store of value, it comes to a term where, you know, these, I guess, certain people have a large desire on certain things that, you know, they keep the
right. So it's the inability to dilute is kind of the biggest you know, what do you want to say, value prospect, you know? Yeah, I mean, I've kind of struggled with it, honestly. So I think now that I'm talking about it with you, I'm starting to, I understand it a bit better, just as far as, why we went from wanting to be, I say we, but maybe the Bitcoin maxis more specifically, went from wanting to be a world currency to kind of being okay with being a store of value, an international digital store of value. I've kind of struggled to wrap my head around.
Right? They some people put their, so-called, they don't want to lose the value. They put in assets. They buy property, they invest in stocks or whatever that keep
it's just what works, right? It's where the value is, kind of basic demand and supply, I guess, right? And on the blockchain though, which maybe has a little bit more implications to our point kind of internationally, and how things grow that way. So when looking at the kind of NFT space specifically, right? Now you've got these NFTs are on Ethereum, and you look at the Sound Money principles. Would you consider yourself an Ethereum maxi, or are you impressed by, maybe Solana or Tezos, and what they're doing? And do you think that they are also doing a good job of kind of following these Sound Money principles? And I just want to quickly say as well, for anyone in the chat, thank you for joining us. Please do feel free to ask any questions, smash that follow if you haven't already. Anybody asks questions in the chat, we'll pick at random an NFT giveaway, but also we're going to have a cool giveaway from Manlo for the YouTube video in the future by tomorrow as well. So definitely feel free to ask any questions from the chat. But yeah, Manlo, what do you think about Ethereum versus these other smart contract blockchains that are popping up or that have come out?
Yeah, I think they're also competing that layer 2 solution where I think we all, in the NFT industry, feel the pain for the gas wall fee. So I think they're just trying to compete with with the big brother.
Yeah, and they seem to be competing, especially Tezos specifically seems to be competing almost exclusively in the NFT space, whereas Solana, I think, is trying to fill a lot of that smart computing on the blockchain role and trying to be a little bit quicker version of Ethereum, you could say. So what do you think about the criticism around their level of decentralization? Are you familiar with that at all? And do you think that going back to my point about immutability being one of the 3 kind of foundational concepts when I look at Web3, that's where I think some criticism of maybe Solana and Tezos, whether they will basically be around for the long haul, or are they too centralized? Do you have any thoughts on that?
Well, if you look at history, right, the top 10 or 20 from that, out of that 7,000 altcoin, it shifts from time to time. The technology change, they will get replaced by a better one. So it's hard to tell. And I wouldn't, as I've been through various of cycles, I've seen it comes and go. So I only, invest on in the Sound Money, who has those properties, and recognize those, and invest wisely.
I'm with you. Like I'm cool with, because I've found some amazing art on Tezos, and so for that reason alone, I fully support Tezos, and I hope that even if that's all they do, if they're just kind of a cool art NFT platform, I think they could exist just for that purpose and work really well. I've seen a lot of people in Brazil and in in India as well that have done really well on Tezos, and I think the smaller fee, the fact that the coin itself isn't too expensive, but there's no gas fees or very minimal gas fees on Tezos as well, makes it a really cool option. It's also just easier to get onto and mint. That's the one thing with Solana right now. It's not super easy. I know technically you can go into Magic Eden and kind of do some minting on their site, but I don't think it's super user friendly. And the space just doesn't seem that welcoming to actual artists, one-of-one artists, or art for art's sake. They're very much trying to kind of emulate the more NFT collection and big generative drop kind of energy that you see on OpenSea and in the Ethereum space, but not as much on the real art side of things, at least from what I've seen so far. I'd be happy to be convinced otherwise. If anyone in the chat has a really cool one-of-one Solana platform, let me know. Or anybody listening to this in the recording, the podcast, I'm definitely interested. I have some Solana NFTs, but not a lot. And the main reason is because I don't see super impressive art in the Solana space yet. But that's just my own 2 cents.
Yeah,
Yeah,
that's the
so
community is amazing. There's so many awesome artists I've seen.
Tezos,
It's inspiring.
you're talking about Tezos?
Yeah.
Yeah. Oh, I know. Yeah, it's been really impressive. And there was a time there where I think everyone was kind of buying into the energy FUD, right, and the environmental FUD around Ethereum. So there were a lot of the really environmentally kind of conscious artists who were just like, no, I'm never going on Ethereum. Like, I'm just going to be on Tezos. Most of those people I've seen kind of come around and be like, okay, yeah, we were misled on some of the negative impacts of NFTs on Ethereum, and specifically NFTs, because the actual creation of the NFT doesn't add any really expenditure on an energy, and all of the energy being used by the Ethereum network is going to be used whether or not you mint your NFT. So it really is, it's kind of a non-issue that some people are still bringing up because of mainstream media has got a lot of misinformation out there about environmental impacts of Ethereum. So do you have any thoughts on that, Manlo?
For environmental impact?
Yeah, just
or
environmental impacts in general, and just your feedback on it. Do you hear a lot about it still as a concern when you're talking to maybe people who aren't as heavy in the Web3 space?
I think for the past the 8 years of time, they're just upgrading, right?
Mm.
Like we upgrade software, we upgrade the world, and things will improve. It just sometimes takes time to build. As a builder, how hard to we're kind of moving the digital mountain right now,
Right.
one piece at a time. But I think all those things will improve in the future. Um, I I'm not so experimental on other platform yet. My attention is kind of short, so
I hear
I
you.
just want to stay on one platform, just peace of mind for that case. Yeah.
No doubt. Well, I do want to take the time to really ask people to go to OpenSea.io, check out InfoRemix, look up the Art of Sound Money collection. He's also got another really cool new collection that's got some amazing pieces on it as well, which we're going to share with you here. I'm not seeing...
that one's more fun.
That one's more fun, yeah. But I like the dry, like technical philosophies really behind your Art of Sound Money. And I do feel like the people out there who understand the foundations of blockchain, who understand the foundations of what makes Web3 so revolutionary, really need to look at your art collection here and consider purchasing some. And I'm myself
before we jump, I think we should touch upon inclusivity.
Yeah, let's
I mean, it's not quite Sound Money principle. Yeah. But in this collection, I'm just trying to, capturing all the good virtual.
Yeah, I like it. So it's not quite a Sound Money principle, but it's important to the space,
you can design a currency or that technology to accommodate different kinds of people, right? Imagine, hi. Imagine, a deaf person, you cannot see what paper money that she's touching. Now you can use technology to accurately enter the amount.
No problem. So I was saying that inclusivity, I see it as a very important philosophy of Web3. And I'm wondering how you see inclusivity kind of factoring in on the blockchain specifically.
Yeah, I think it allowed people to design a system where it include people with different ability. A person who cannot see can use that device to actually use voice to transact, right? You can hear if you have certain disability that you know exactly what you're doing instead of touching that paper money that you don't know. So that's one for that use case, and that's.
Yeah, I mean, I think accessibility on that front is definitely huge, and I hadn't even thought about that actually, and just the idea, that definitely visually impaired or even other issues probably get overlooked easily.
And that's why, like, no matter what gender that you have, or technology don't care. They don't discriminate on how you can use or access that value, and that's what I like about this attribute.
Yeah, well, I mean, inclusivity has been huge about, you know, what we're talking about here at Web3 Warriors. And I think it goes back to what we talked about when we were touching on portability as well, and just having that peer-to-peer transaction, right? With that, you know, clearing out of the middle people and really allowing, you know, basically no more gatekeepers. You know, I think inclusivity is tied up in that fact that, you know, now, again, certain areas, certain corners of the world are not, you know, having a much more bigger load, you know, a bigger lift to try to get their work to their audience, to a new economy, to a new you know, potential really for support and for revenue. So I think that inclusivity is so massive. And the blockchain created that, you know, Bitcoin created that before there were any NFTs, before there was this awesome new economy, you know, built on Web3 that's just allowing peer-to-peer transactions all over the world. You know, it was a dream of Satoshi. It was a dream of Bitcoin really before anything else. And that peer-to-peer functionality is inclusive by nature. Like he said, you know, technology doesn't care about your gender, doesn't care about your, you know, tribe or your geographic location. It's just, you know, one peer, one node to another node, compensating and helping each other out, whether you need to send money to help someone, whether you want to buy a piece of art from them, you know, whatever the case may be. You know, it's really just, you know, the doors are wide open, and inclusivity is definitely a good philosophy to kind of hang that on, and to see, you know, just how much blockchain is really creating economic inclusivity in a whole new way. I love it. Thanks, Manlo. Any other thoughts on that topic?
I'm good. I was just looking. The time flies already.
It does fly, man. We're having too much time. It's a good conversation.
Yeah, too much fun. We need to do like another
cool
at night.
Yeah, no doubt. All right, so let's all right, you want to have any other thoughts on Sound Money before we show your other collection? I know I want to show that too. As a gamer, I really like your other collection. I think it's really cool. And do we have any other questions from the chat, or any questions from the chat? Chat's been quiet today so far. If we do have any questions, participation can get you rewarded, just so you know. But yeah, seeing no further questions, we'll run over to the other on cyber corner of the metaverse here, where InfoRemix has shown some of his amazing pieces. Yeah, so maybe let us know a little bit more about this collection, and I'm going to try to open it up on OpenSea as well. I like the bit art, you know. I like the Mario references.
Yeah, that one is it's so funny though. While I was using Figma, I don't use Figma for other collections. I use Photoshop and stuff. Mm-hmm. But you know, while I was doing it, and just, you know, different strings of thoughts just start coming in, and it just, you know, start pasting it and constructing it. So quickly, it just filled up, you know, the whole collection. I started off with a piece using the inspiration by the Lego idea, and that's why I play off with the logo, letting go, Lego. And it was a piece that I made, I think 2014-15, the Genesis piece, to use art to provoke, or to voice out art against gun violence. And it's such a release for me. Use that kind of humorous approach, and that piece kind of spring off that style, using Lego pieces. And then, but they're, you know, as I'm in this space for the past year, you're seeing different things. It's just some of my thoughts within this journey. I think it's beyond the graphic itself. You have to read the title and some of the short description that really ties in the meaning if you read through it. So that was part of the design too.
I like it. So for this one, the scissors, you got trim your portfolio, but not your integrity. I was just reading the description you had on one of these, the return on integrity. Trim your portfolio, but not your integrity.
Yeah, as you can hear, so many scams that just keep one more. They just want to sell a piece for profit and load in their portfolio. Like, I think it's just within. I think this collection kind of remind me hopefully in the future I'll get like like crazy, whatever. Then they still remind me like stay grounded. So
Yeah,
a lot
no
of
doubt.
pieces.
What made you decide to go down the kind of bit art, but combining bit art with Lego? I really like it. It's a really cool concept. I haven't really seen anybody incorporating any kind of Lego reference yet, so that was a kind of cool idea. What made you think of doing it that way?
Any concept as an artist, any concept is kind of a different style. I think using vector art allowed me to scale quickly, and it's the simplest. Again, it's the simplicity tie into 8-bit art, but yet contrast in some of the kind of deep thoughts, if you will. No matter where you're at, you're gonna. I do meditate. It helps me, and those kind of.
You think it has it's giving you a meditative property, kind of getting into the zone, and like you say, you're kind of combining 8-bit with some real art, like some other designs elements.
Look at the whatever recent Bitcoin conference, right? The amount of money, the amount of whatever value you see in the VC world, in the stock world, it just flooded, right? And yet, just like they have money for the war, but no money for the poor. Like it just some art to express that injustice or imbalance, if you will. And again, right, like some of that you go to charity. If my art can do some good, so be it. So just continue this path to create.
That's very cool. So what made you think of Let Go? Like, were you just playing with Lego with your daughter and you're like, hey, this is an interesting concept?
It's a more philosophical way. I think everyone has to let go of something. If your past self, your baggage, or some tangible, intangible things, you don't want to hunted down by emotion if you attach to an object. As well as spiritually, certain past negative thoughts has to let go, and by reminding yourself, that transcend moment while you're meditating or self-reflection. No matter how much money you have, you can still change me. I think that's kind of a extension of this Sound Money.
Yeah, stay grounded no matter what, right?
Yeah. It's like remind those NFT richer, whatever you become accidental millionaire or wealthy, whoever, right? Do some good, like this kind of, because there's a piece called "What's Your Number?" That was a satire for a lot of corporate, in this conglomerate. But if you extend to individual, what's your number? You gotta ask yourself, one day enough is enough. I don't have to chase for whatever. I think that is the goal, is as any human being to be free.
Most definitely.
But, you kind of all go back to that Sound Money. Do you have the financial literacy for you to achieve what you want to do? Because it's easy to take your time, and you can take your time, but you cannot take your time when you need to survive. Without understanding how your money is being corrupted, erased, diluted, you cannot protect your wealth to help yourself or your family or your friends. So I think it's all kind of tied up. And yeah, that is another mini series, if you will, is the whole about gun violence. And using the Moreau style,
really powerful. It's really powerful, and it's kind of jarring too, because there's the contrast of Legos for kids, right? And then you got the anti-violence messaging and the guns. Yeah, man, it's impactful. Really, it's powerful. And that collection is called Let Go, all one word. Highly recommend anybody hearing us chat right now, please do go to OpenSea.io, search up Let Go. It's by InfoRemix. Got a really, really cool artwork here, combining Lego and really interesting design elements and really cool messaging that's very uplifting and, like you say, anti-violence, anti-war. anti-greed, really, and pro-gamer, which I'm always behind. I love it. It's really well done, man. Really well done, Manlo. I'm looking at this inhale positivity and exhale negativity, and I'm loving it. I like the purple. Purple always hooks me in. Can you explain a little bit behind this? Like, is it, yeah, what's happening here? He's like meditating in the zone. Just give me a little bit more explanation.
Title was, when I was making this piece of artwork, actually, all the negativity was inside the bubble. And they were exhaling positivity, right? So as each day comes in, different things gonna attack you. You're gonna inhale that, but you translate into positivity. But I changed the visual in a way that once you have a clear sense of who you are not affected by either one of those. Is have a different thought of how you find tranquility, whatever you do, whatever you want to focus. And that was, one of the pieces that reminded me to aspire to that state.
Oh, I love it. That's beautiful. That's cool. And the Lego kind of like gives it almost like a youthful appeal, but then it's such like a calming, central kind of message. So it's really, really neat. I really like the contrast. Juxtaposition might be the word I'm looking for. And then this other meditative guy here. So he's got the weight on one hand and the Mario question box in the other hand. What are those two things representing? And then it's like raining crypto and fiat. I love it. It's really cool, man. Yeah, give me a little bit of breakdown on this one and I'll let you go. I won't make you describe every single piece.
This one's pretty plain and simple. Is kind of, you have to exercise, stay curious, and eat more plant-based diet. That was those, you go outdoor, get close to the ocean. That's what I love.
Exercise, stay curious, eat plants. Love it.
And yeah.
And then those waves underneath are supposed to be like you're on a beach or you're close to the ocean kind of thing.
Yeah, you meditate. How do you balance, right? Yeah. Like that is kind of surreal. But yeah, I just like the idea of floating in the ocean.
I'm going to say it, Manlo. You are undiscovered right now, man. You got to do a little bit more shilling over there. And this art is going to fly, bro. I'm convinced. Now, you got gaming, you got mental health, you've got finance, and Lego. Just
yeah,
really cool, kind of really cool different things happening.
The marketing side, whatnot, is different beats, but I just like to create as an artist.
Yeah, and I mean, it's just a matter of plugging in too, right, Manlo?
Yeah. And I haven't even, advertised, all these amazing vector, right? And you can scale up. I can even grant the right for anyone to use that to their own. But but Lego is my collection. It's gonna be the expanded brand. And so, but any collector can use that in the high res realm. That I'm gonna take care of them. Oh, as well as the Sound Money. If anyone get one of those, we'll definitely get an hour of my design consultant on either Figma or some design work. So nice. just putting out there.
So you can get a real high res version if you purchase any one of these Art of Sound Money NFTs. Is what you're saying?
Both. Let Go. They all, like, these two collections are made in Vector. Vector is is the vector base,
right? That
they can scale up. So those you can print it, put it in the 8K monitor, what have you. So it will still look good, whatever metaverse.
And is the vector file, like, it's not included as an unlockable though? You're just offering to send that?
No, there are two included.
Okay.
So I'm still slowly pacing out different packages for the collector, but I'm just voicing out different tier going to be set up.
Very cool. Very cool. Yeah, no, I really think you're onto something really awesome here. And the concept is really impressive. So wishing you all the best on that, man, and definitely keep sharing it. And I think you're going to find a lot of really interested collectors because I think you hit on some really key themes that especially the gamer vibe. I really love it. I'm gonna have to grab one of these before other people find out about them. But I appreciate you, Manlo. I think you really opened my eyes on a lot of these Sound Money concepts. I think we've we dove into a lot of what makes blockchain and Bitcoin specifically, but really Ethereum as well, and really Web3 more broadly, so impactful and so revolutionary, world changing, you know, creating an inclusive, transparent, and accountable economy on the blockchain that is getting people compensated equitably and fairly in direct peer-to-peer transactions anywhere in the world. It's a beautiful thing. So I do have to ask you before we close, Manlo, just what I ask all of my guests. What are your thoughts, or what do you say to people who, you know, are just learning about Web3 for the first time and maybe are a little bit skeptical? You know, what do you say to them to kind of convince them, or what's your advice? What's your advice to those people just learning about Web3 for the first time?
I think just read an article, explain Bitcoin like I'm 5. But
Nice.
it's just kind of you know, you have to understand the technology, what changes. If you can break it down in the simplest term, people are likely to understand and adopt. But whatever you can measure is all up there and being transparent. So there's no, you know, funny business behind the closed door by a small group of people affecting a lot of people. I think that is just one thing that I keep celebrating.
Right. It's all, like you say, fully transparent and right open there for the research, right? So the advice is to do your own research, but everything is available. So there's no smoke and mirrors. There's, you know, everything is there for the taking. All you got to do is take the time to research and realize what you're getting into. And I would recommend do plug in with our communities in Clubhouse or on Twitter. You can follow at The Dream Conduit and join us there. We help new people onboard into this NFT space. You can also look up Blockchain Gospel as another really cool community. So yeah, we're, you know, plug in where you can, do your research, and we'll hopefully find you there. But thank you, Manlo. Any other final thoughts before we wrap? I know you got to get back to your daughter and you got a busy day ahead of you.
Likewise.
Yeah.
It's been really fun since you know you in Clubhouse Day and doing this little side chat, fireside. You can kind of go in deep and get to know each other. So I really enjoyed sharing this time with you and sharing some of the artwork. So
Awesome.
Hopefully more to come.
Definitely more to come, Manlo. I'd love to have you back sometime, and definitely keep us posted on both your Art of Sound Money and your Let Go collection. Thank you again for sharing with us. The podcast will be live later this evening, and we'll have the YouTube live by tomorrow, and we're going to do a fun little giveaway with the YouTube. Hopefully get those subs and likes up and get everyone watching. So thank you again, Manlo, for all of that, and I look forward to touching base with you, and we'll keep talking in the NFT community. All right.
Cheers.
Cool. Take it easy. Until next time, we'll catch you in the metaverse. Peace out.
Okay.